Hello, everyone. I hope your internships are going well. I'm going to get started on my patient. So my patient is a 39-year-old female. She came in because she was curious about getting a hearing aid. She had a hearing loss her entire life in her left ear, but she wasn't completely sure. She said that she may have been sick at some point in her childhood. But for the most part, she's had it since she could remember, and it's continued to get worse throughout the years. Previously, she owned hearing aids, but was never impressed with their ability to help her. She just always felt like they were more of a bother than they were help, so she chose not to wear them more than she wore them. She did have a history of noise exposure. She works in a really loud kitchen and bars, and there's a lot of noise there, and she had a couple of other smaller exposures that she discussed. She did also have a history of dizziness, but it was only one time. It was as a teenager. She said that she had debilitating vertigo that lasted 2 days. And she denied any other questions like otalgia, fullness, drainage, tinnitus, family history, or history of ear infections. She constantly battles with anxiety and depression, and she uses medication in order to combat that. She has had multiple head injuries, but nothing that presented any issues in the past. She's had multiple CT scans, but none of her injuries were so serious. I think she said she had a couple of concussions, but they all healed properly. She discussed being bothered by loud noises, for instance, the ones like banging dishes at work. We asked her if she wore hearing protection in that environment, and she said she couldn't because there were constantly people yelling orders at her. So since that's the only real environment that she consistently has them, she doesn't tend to wear hearing protection. She relies on lip reading in loud environments, but also in a lot of not so loud environments as well. The masks have really posed an issue for her, as they have everybody else. She came to us because she wanted to try hearing aids again, but still isn't sure if they're worth investing the money in. The patient didn't bring any audiologic tests to the appointment, but believed that the last hearing test that she had was 10 years ago. She did end up finding those hearing tests, and there were some shifts, but they were shifts that you would expect to see within a 10-year span, so it wasn't like a huge drop or anything like that. So her tests and results. She had clear canals, type A in the left and type AS in the right. And that was interesting because she did have a good mixed component in her left ear. So we found that to be odd. But as you can see, the right ear had a tiny bit of hearing loss, above 4K, but it wasn't anything we were too concerned about. She had good SRT, and she had 100% in the right ear at 45 dB, and a 24% in the left ear at 95. She really struggled a lot with her left ear. During a consultation, we took her back into the room to discuss what her hearing loss looked like now. And during that time, we were discussing dizziness, and that is when we decided to do the Fukuda step test. And as she performed that, she veered to the left, and she was so shocked by these results that she did the test in front of us about 3 other times, just because she thought it was so amazing that the way the anatomy worked. So all of our results were in agreement and were reliable, except for the TIMPs and the mixed components. But we didn't do ARTs because of the mixed component. We figured that they would mostly just be absent in the conditions with the left ear. So we referred her to the ENT, who she saw very quickly after seeing us. After her first visit, they did order imaging, but her results weren't back before the hearing aid consultation. The hearing aid consult was approved by the ENT, but a purchase was not made before getting all of the results back. We recommended a cross hearing aid to her as well as the ENT. She seemed to be interested, but she just really wanted to see if she could have insurance or the Americans with Disabilities Act to see if she could find some way to help pay for them. She seemed to be really hesitant about the hearing aids, mostly just because of the money, but she did have that apprehension about them working similarly to her last pairs. She didn't want to buy them and then not wear them. Because of the tympanometry and the mixed component in the pure tones, we were both actually pretty stumped about what we were looking at, because it seemed so odd. But she ended up getting a diagnosis of Pendred syndrome, as well as an enlarged vestibular aqueduct on the left side, which would explain her dizziness spell as a teenager, potentially, assuming it wasn't some sort of bug. And it would also explain she did have a goiter in her neck, as well as the unilateral hearing loss. So all of our results were consistent with the diagnosis. No other treatment recommendations were given at the time other than the cross hearing aid. And she was counseled to avoid any more head injuries. And other than that, she needed no other treatment. Before we brought her back in for her next hearing aid consult to see if she was ready to purchase the hearing aids, she actually did end up getting another head injury. So I believe they actually ended up referring her back to imaging just to make sure that there was nothing else going on. And as far as I know, those results were clear. So she's had multiple follow-up appointments with audiology and ENT since the hearing aid consultation appointments, but she actually never returned for hearing aids. But she continues to consider the benefit of the cross hearing aid, which is what we have recommended to her, versus a unilateral right hearing aid. We've counseled her a lot on how both would potentially impact her life, and I think right now she's still hung up on the financial aspect. So as of right now, she has not purchased any hearing aids, and I actually don't think that she will end up getting any in the near future. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope you got something out of this patient, and feel free to ask me any questions. Thanks, guys. Good luck on internship.